This evening it's my pleasure to be chatting with John Connell. Hi John, and welcome to the show.
Thanks Peter, very much.
John, you've had a very distinguished career. I don't think people would mind me saying that you're approaching your centenary and you're looking marvellous incidentally. Could you give us a little background to your life story, where it began? I believe you were born in Brunswick, Preston area.
Yeah, I was brought up, I was very young in Brunswick, and that's where I went on a building, and that's how I knew, by the time I was 7, I knew I needed to be in construction. I didn't know it was engineering.
So you were interested in building and construction. That obviously led you to become a draftsman initially?
Yes, I went to the Collingwood Technical School to learn more, and I did. I learned how to build, and that's how I was following it up.
And Cyril Hudspeth took you into to his engineering practice as a draftsman?
No, he advertised, and I answered the advertisement just in 1938. That was.
Yeah, so as a draftsman, 38, the war was coming along, the Second World War.
Well, the whole of that decade was sabre rattling. Italy and Germany were very, very keen on fighting, and I got me to join the army at 1930. And
you stayed in the army for a considerable time. What action you were in? Which battalion?
The 57th Battalion at Regular Street, Preston, and I was interested in signalling, and that's how I became a signaller.
Right.
But that got me more money.
And that took you overseas during the war, and you fought in New Guinea?
I fought in the 57th Battalion, but I became the signals officer.
And what was life like during that time?
Very rough and crude. We were very lucky to actually have even food. I went to the Collingwood Technical School. I had to pass an examination to get into that then. And I left school voluntarily after talking to my parents when I was 13 and a half.
During the war, you would have seen probably the best and the worst of men and humanity.
Oh yes.
How did you stay together?
I think the war. I would say to anyone, the war was the best course I ever did, because it was an infantry battalion. I started as a signals officer. I ended up as a major in that unit with a company commander. I actually was the technical company commander for that battalion, and yes, you got a good cross section of the community.
When you came out of the war, you continued or finalised your studies, and
yes, I did. Most of my studying was done in England. My first qualification was the structural engineers in England. That got me around the world.
And you formed an engineering practice in Melbourne?
I think I told you I went as a draftsman with Cyril Hudspeth, and he was an engineer, and he was an RMIT man then. Him and I became very good friends, but he invited me socially to the Francis Ormond Ladies' Nights, and that's when I became a member of the craft.
So Cyril was responsible for introducing you to Freemasonry.
It's been a wonderful thing.
Now, during your professional life as an engineer, you were responsible for a number of significant developments in and around Melbourne. I suppose the most interesting of those is the Melbourne Underground.
Yes.
What can you tell us about that? Apparently it was originally planned in the early 20s but didn't proceed then.
Well, it was planned in the 1927, but we didn't. It was kicked around politically until Balti decided we should get the underground, and it was necessary. I knew that, and I took me because did buildings mostly. I went overseas and studied tunnelling as well, and got to know Mott, Hay and Anderson in London, and they did all the London Underground, and they did a lot of it anyway, and that's what we did.
Well, this probably was new technology for Melbourne, but not in the world. So, why were you chosen to build the underground?
That's an interesting case. It was called, the tenders were called worldwide, even for the design, but I knew it would come to that, and it took me 5 years before that to get the team together, and that meant going around the world to talk to people, because there's not much good at talking about the Snowy Mountain scheme, which is a wonderful scheme, but if to tunnel through mountains is a different thing altogether than tunnelling through a city, and we had no experiences here for that, so I had to go and find that out, and I did.
It's obviously made a great difference to the city in terms of transport.
Yeah, well, it would put Melbourne, make Melbourne interesting, because everything came to the Flinders Street, and that was the busiest station in the world at the time, and the people had to go from there to wherever they were in the city. But the Melbourne Underground moved them around the city.
So you would have seen a great change in the landscape of Melbourne over those years.
Yeah, well, the Melbourne Underground, I knew, would change Melbourne, and if you look at where the stations are in that project, you'll find that the development has taken place right near the station, and I found that when I went overseas. I went overseas a lot, and before the thing started, I went around the world and looked at the underground.
You obviously found time in your busy professional career to be involved in Freemasonry. You joined in 1946,
yes,
and you rose through a number of offices and became its Grand Master in the late 80s.
Yes, I did.
What attracted you to Freemasonry, and what do you think its benefits are?
Well, people attract me to Freemasonry, and around the world, as I've told you, I was amazed to find the link between mankind around the world wherever I went.
It really transcends all races and
transcends everything. I think around the world it's wonderful to find that wherever you go, no matter what your nationality is, you're welcomed.
Do you see Freemasonry today for the younger man as relevant as it was when you joined?
Much more relevant. I think that when I joined, you must remember, it was just after the Second World War, and everyone was flocking to everything. But now they've got, I think they're better educated, and they're better. The television has shown them a better spanning of the world, and therefore it's going to play a very big part. And I think Freemasonry in the future, it'll change. It should change, because it's been changing, not changing violently, but it should change to suit the type of world it's been born in. It's been going for long enough.
It seems a great shame that Freemasonry wasn't discussed a lot 50 years ago, because the organisation did equally good works back then as it does now.
Well, it was considered to be considered almost, when I first joined even, it was considered to be nearly a secret society. It wasn't. And it's been opened for everyone since. But still, there's still parts of the world where it is. You've got to understand that. I stayed with the Grand Master of Ireland in 1991, I think it was, and I find out that in Ireland then it was pretty secret, but not a secret society, but they weren't boasting about it, they weren't open.
Well, John, it's been very interesting talking to you. It's been great to hear your reflections on life, your profession and Freemasonry, and we wish you all the best for your 100-year anniversary, and thank you for joining us today.
Oh, I think it's been wonderful. I want to thank Freemasonry for a wonderful life.